In today's video, you'll be learning about the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula can be used for any quadratic equation. However, you should only use the quadratic formula when you cannot factor a quadratic equation. The quadratic formula is something like this. So it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now I'll get to what these a, c, and b means. But for now, as you can see here, it gives you, the quadratic formula gives you the 0 as it is, meaning if you plug in all the correct values in correctly, it will give you the 0 automatically, since x is equal to whatever value the value will be. Okay, say for example, you have the quadratic equation x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. In this case, it would be best, in order to solve this, it's best to actually factor the quadratic equation. So we'll just factor it. And then we get x plus 2 is equal to 0, and x is equal to 0. Sorry, x is equal to negative 2. However, we can actually solve this another way. So, here's the other way. We can instead, I'll rewrite the quadratic equation again. Now, we can instead plug in the values into the quadratic formula in order to solve the quadratic equation. So, now we'll get to what a, b, and c mean in the quadratic formula on the left, on the top left. So, a standard quadratic equation goes like this: a times x's second power plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Now, there is actually a coefficient next to the x squared. It's 1, but we don't write it down since it's already implied. So 1 relates to the a, and then 4x, the 4 relates to the b, and then plus 4 relates to c. Now we just plug 1, 4, and 4 into the quadratic formula to get our roots. So let's do that right now. X is equal to negative 4 plus or minus b squared, so 4 squared, minus 4ac, 4 times 1 times 4, over 2a, which is just 2 times 1, since a is just 1. Okay? So now, when we solve all of this, we get negative 4 plus or minus 16 minus 16 over 2. And then this is just equal to negative 4 plus or minus 0. Since 16 minus 16 is 0, square root of 0 is just 0 over 2. Now, since negative 4 minus 0 and negative 4 plus 0 is just the same value, negative 4, we can just rewrite this as negative 4 over 2, and we get 2. Sorry, we get negative 2. So x is just equal to negative 2. And we get the same value on each side, which means that the quadratic formula and factoring work. Now let's try a harder problem. Let's say we have this equation right here. In this case, we unfortunately cannot solve it without using the quadratic formula, as factoring does not really work. No matter how you try to maneuver this problem, you cannot factor it. So, in order to factor this, we actually have to use a quadratic formula, as I said earlier. So, again, I'll just write the quadratic equation of how it's defined. And yeah, there we go. So the 2 correlates to the A, the 7 correlates to the B, and the 7 here also correlates, 7 correlates to the C, the plus 7. Okay, now let's plug this all into the quadratic formula. We get x is equal to negative b, 7 is b, so we put negative 7 plus or minus b squared. What is b? 7 is b, so 7 squared minus 4 is c. What is a? A is 2. What is c? C is 7. Now, we put this all under 2 times a. What is a? Well, a is 2. Okay, now all we have to do is solve for this and we will get our answers. In this case, answers. So, this is equal to x is equal to negative 7 plus or minus 49 minus 7 times 4 is 28. 28 times 2 is 56. So minus 56 over 4. Okay, so now we have an interesting dilemma here, right? It's a very interesting dilemma. And that dilemma is that 49 minus 56 will give you a negative number, meaning that there's actually no real solutions to this problem here. I'll talk more about real solutions and one solution and 0 solutions and how the quadratic formula can predict the amount of solutions a quadratic equation will have in another video. But for now, I'll assume that you know what imaginary numbers mean, and I'll talk about imaginary numbers in another video also. But still though, so in this case we have x is equal to negative 7 plus or minus the square root of negative 7 over 4. Okay? Remember that the square root of negative 7 in imaginary terms is equal to the square root of 7 times the square root of negative 1. And negative 1 is just really just equal to I, according to many mathematical rules. So, x is just equal to, right, our two solutions are going to be negative 7 plus or minus negative 7 over 4 plus or minus I times the square root of 7 over 4. And it's two solutions because there's a plus or minus. Okay, let's try one more example. Okay, so let's say for example, we have this equation here. Okay, we'll do this equation. Now, this equation might look very familiar to you, as we've actually done something similar to it before in this video that you're currently watching right now. That's because you can actually factor out a 2 and we'll get the same equation that we did before in the beginning of the video. However, it doesn't matter whether we use this portion here, this equation here, or if we use this equation here as the coefficients for use of the coefficients and the basis of what we refer to as coefficients. Because either way, we're going to get the same result. So we already know that x is going to be equal to negative 2 for the 0. And to prove to you that no matter what you times the standard equation, right, you can times x squared plus 4x plus 4 by 3, and you'll get 3x squared plus 12x squared, plus 12x plus 12, and you'll still get x is equal to negative 2 if you plug it all into the quadratic equation. I will now show you that right now. So the quadratic that just proves to show that the quadratic equation is really universal and does not matter what you plug into it, as long as the equation you're trying to solve is quadratic. So we get x is equal to -8 plus or minus b squared, so 64, minus 4ac, so 4 times 8 times 2, over 2a, so 2 times 2. And this becomes -8 plus or minus 64 minus 64, which is 0, and then over 4. So then we get x is equal to -8 over 4, since plus or minus 0 is just 0. So then we get -8 over 4, which is then equal to 2, which is then equal to, let me rewrite that again, which is then equal to -2, and that's our answer. So yeah, this video was meant to show the strengths of the quadratic equation and how valuable it can be in various situations. So if you're ever stuck and you cannot factor a quadratic equation, try using the quadratic formula, because it can really be a lifesaver, and it's universal for almost any type of quadratic equation. Thank you. See you in the next video.